Hi guys, welcome to this, my Brute Poison guide for Dota Underlords and the build which I used most frequently to reach top 100 and more recently almost top 50. It is a very reliable all-rounder build which relies on leveling up quickly and putting in a lot of different alliances in order to compensate for the fact that you won't have that many 2 and certainly no 3 stars on the board. The general principle of the build is that it slows down the tempo of the fight. So you will be slowing down the attack speed and lowering the attack damage of all of your opponents, or as many as you can, in order to get multiple procs of the brute debuff and also to give your poison time to whittle the opponent down and damage them. So why play it? Why play this build? That's a fair question. So I think the first reason is its reliability. So especially for those of you who might be a little bit sick of missing your roles. So you're sitting there, you're playing your role knights, your role assassins, your role brawny, whatever, and you just can't hit the last one. You know, you're on 8 out of 9 and then you go out and you're sad and you lose MMR. That is the downside of role builds. This is a quintessential level build, and as such, it is more reliable and less sort of RNG dependent, and that can be very comforting for many players, especially those who stress out about RNG going against them. So that's one reason. If you're sort of wanting to avoid the RNG side of things a little bit, of course, you can never truly avoid RNG, and we'll talk about that a little later on. Other reasons are to sort of if you enjoy navigating some tricky decision making. So I think Brute Poison is largely based around the decisions that you have to make when things don't quite go your way. And they won't always go your way. You will end up in situations where key pieces just don't show up. And as we'll discuss later on, you really don't roll very much at all in this build. So you are kind of at the mercy of your shop choices. And so it's the skill and decision making and tactics involved in navigating those situations where your key pieces aren't necessarily there yet and you need to decide what to do instead. Additionally, if you enjoy playing the high-end good stuff, so if you just like having some big tanky boys on the field, you know, then Doom and Axe are here for you. I've got to tell you, they're here for you all day long, as is the Dragon Knight and Troll Warlord and all that sort of high-end Tide good stuff ready to go. And of course, you can slip in a Medusa as well if you need to. So if you enjoy playing the high-end good stuff, you want to get a chance to slap it on the board, and you want to live long enough to get there to do it, this is another reason to play this build. One other reason to play Brute Poison is if you quite enjoy playing a reactive style. So there are certain styles of play in many games, not just Dota Underlords, where you can be the aggressor, you can sort of execute one particular push or rush or strategy, and your opponent simply has to deal with it. And those can be a lot of fun. But this is one of the more sort of nuanced reactive builds where you need to be scouting your opponent a little bit and figuring out what they're doing, and then you have a sort of wider variety of options in order to counter that. So what are the basic principles of the build? Well, it can be broken down as simply as this. You do not touch the R key, you do not roll down at all until you reach level 9. So you are going to be leveling up. All of your gold will be going into buying the heroes that you see and leveling up until you reach level 9. Unless one of two things happens. Either you have about 4 or 5 pairs on your board and bench combined. So if you have 4 or 5 pairs and you think you have a lot of roll down value, meaning that when you roll down, there's a very high likelihood that you will hit something which will improve your power on the board, so therefore value in the roll. You know, there's a high chance that that gold will lead to an increase in your power, and you think that you need it. So if you think that the power of your board compared to that of the lobby is too weak, then you can roll down once, twice, 3 times maximum until you find 1 or 2 of those pairs. It does not give you the excuse to suddenly roll down until you hit all of those pairs. You just want to hit 1 or 2 in order to get that sort of power level back up a little bit, and then you need to go straight back to leveling up. The reason is that this build very much relies upon the late game high tier pieces. So you do need to get to level 8, 9, and 10, preferably 10, in order to increase your chances enough to find all of those pieces and then in the late game try to 2-star them for the win. Therefore, we cannot hit the roll key, we simply don't have the time or the gold, and you need to rely on the strength of your alliances and of the pieces that you're putting on the board, and they're progressively more powerful pieces, even if they are just 1-stars, and if you do manage to 2-star them, that's great, that'll give you the power that you need to sustain. Second principle is economy. Economy is king. You need money. The whole build relies around getting to level 9, level 10 as quickly as possible and having enough health total, we'll come back to that in a second, to be able to take advantage of that. So, win streaking. Win streaking is quite key in this build. It means that we want to focus on early game boards that will win consistently. That means we're going to be looking into shamans mainly, a little bit of savage perhaps, maybe some night troll if we want to go that way. But either way, we want to make sure that we are trying to get some win streaks going on. That means that we're going to invest in those win streaks. We will, if necessary, we will level up aggressively in order to put additional heroes or alliances on the board to get those 7 wins in a row if we possibly can. And that will help us get the economy rolling, which will help us to level up and stay ahead of the lobby and be able to put on those alliances and heroes that will keep us alive. We'll start by outnumbering everybody and out-alliancing everybody, and later on we'll outpower everybody. That's the idea, but we do need to keep that momentum going. If you do fall behind with brute poison at some stage, you can find it quite tricky to recover because we don't have as much roll down value as the others. We need to continue leveling, and if you're getting killed while leveling, not good. So let's talk about health total. Health total is both important and one of the main advantages of playing brute poison. As you start to get used to this build, you will notice that your health total is quite consistently higher than everybody else's, because you will have some early win streaks. Even when you lose, you will lose by a very small margin and you won't lose much health, and your sort of consistency and power level in the early to mid game is incredible, especially in the mid game, and that will keep your health total very high. That's quite useful because we need that health total for this period towards the late game, which is where other people are starting to hit their 3-stars. So people will be rolling down and you'll be leveling up, and at some stage they're going to hit their 3-stars, and that's when their power spike happens, and that's when you're going to start losing health. You just are, that's fine. You're going to have a lot of 1-stars and a few 2-stars on the board. They're going to start to have some 3-stars on the board. Yes, you will outnumber them, but 3-stars are incredibly strong, and we need something to mitigate this. And what do we mitigate it with? Well, our early and mid-game health total advantage. So while we are getting those final levels up to get to 9, to get to 10, we're going to need a bit of a buffer, some health, which we can soak up that damage, those losses that we will take, and that's fine. But if we don't have that health total, then things are going to get very squeaky towards the end, as we need to get to 9, as we try to get to 10, as we roll down to hit those big good stuff pieces in the end game. We need that little bit of health total to give ourselves the best possible chance of finding the key pieces and therefore turning the tables back into our favor. So do try to keep your health total protected, and that is a situation, and pretty much the only situation, where it's kind of okay to do a few roll downs just to hit 1 or 2 2-stars, just to keep that health total nice and high. All right, so let's talk about the alliances then that we're going to be using and the order in which we're going to prioritize them. So first of all, we're going to start off with shamans. Shamans are the best opening for brute poison. I know that when I'm streaming a lot and I'm sitting there with Magnus, Enchantress, and Tusk, and someone, and I'm saying to the stream, right, looks like a brute poison game. And people are saying, but you haven't got any brutes, you haven't got any poison. You know, how is this a brute poison game? Well, because if I'm on a win streak, then I want to be going into a brute poison build, and I know that I can fairly reliably get there. It's a build which doesn't suffer too much from being contested. It very often will be contested because it's so strong, and it's okay with that. You can get away with it. There are enough ways to navigate it that more than one person can be in this build, and you can both navigate your way through. Of course, it's nice if you're completely uncontested, but it's not the end of the world if you are. So, early game, Shamans are amazing. Savage, also quite strong. And the other possibilities in the very early game are Knights and Trolls, that sort of CK Luna Batrider or CK Dazzle Batrider composition, or Omni if you find him really early or something. Those builds all work fine for getting early win streaks. So essentially the early game is all about win streaking, trying to get as many wins and as much economy and keeping your health as high as possible as you can. And Shaman's best way to do that. They're pretty much auto wins against anything other than Shamans. After that, we move into our key alliances and the ones that give the build its name. So Poisoner. Poisoner is the one you want to get first. It's actually more important than Brutes. In the early game, Poisoner is just, frankly, a bit too strong. But there you go. So that's our first key alliance. We want to lock in the Poisoners. After that, unsurprisingly, in a Poison Brute build, we want to lock in the Brutes. The Brutes will provide our front line. We'll be using Alchemist, who is Brute and Poison, so he obviously fits in very, very nicely to bring both. And a lot of the Brutes are just very strong heroes in their own right, and so that makes them excellent choices to put in, as well as providing a strong bonus, a strong debuff. So for those who don't yet know, the Brute benefit is that each Brute will target opponents which do not yet have the debuff. They will apply that debuff, you basically get extra damage. The longer the fight is, the more times you get that debuff off, and Poisoner helps us do that. After that, we want Trolls. Trolls is an incredibly important side alliance, and that's because Trolls gives us attack speed, and our whole build is based on procs, on hit effects. So Poisoner, every time we hit with a poison hero, we'll apply a stack of poison. That means that if our attack speed is higher, we'll apply those stacks of poison faster. The effect will happen earlier in the round and will have longer to take effect. Perfect. So Trolls, very, very good with Poisoner. Same thing goes with Brutes. The Brutes, if they can just hit incredibly quickly, they can apply that debuff to everyone around them nice and fast, and then by the time it's run out, they're ready to hit the first person with it again, basically giving them the debuff all the time, which is a massive damage increase and very, very useful. So Trolls, giving their attack speed, is the next alliance that we want on the board. And then after that, we want the other very, very important support alliance for almost every build, which is Heartless. Very easy to put on and giving a minus armor debuff across the board when we are often dealing with, Heartless is an unbelievably strong secondary alliance. Don't need to say more on that. We just want to get it in. Then we move into the late game and the late game alliances that we will add in. So the one that we are definitely going to add in, if we find it, is Dragons. So we're going to put the Dragon Knight in combination with good old-fashioned Viper. And yes, so Dragon Knight and Viper will give us the Dragon Alliance, which makes both Dragon Knight and Viper significantly stronger and is a very strong late game combination, one of the main ones that we're looking for. Other than that, we have two more choices, which are Scaled and Warrior. They are more niche and situational and possibilities rather than necessities, so we can either put in Tidehunter and Medusa in the late game if we are dealing with mage opponents, or we can put in Tidehunter, Troll Warlord and Pudge in the late game to give us the warrior benefit if we are dealing with more physical damage dealers. And that is one of those things I was talking about at the start of the guide, which is that you have that possibility to be more reactive. So we have those options of Scaled or Warrior or neither, as we wish. All right, so what does that mean in terms of heroes? We now know which alliances we want to put in. We know why we're playing the build. We know how we're playing the build, what style. So let's get into the heroes themselves. Let's go tier by tier. So, tier 1. Key heroes are Dazzle and Venomancer. Dazzle is probably the most key hero in the build for quite some time because he provides both the trolls and the poison, and he is going to be in your build from the start to the end. You will never kick him out, which means you want to find him and you want to find him fast. That said, we're never re-rolling, so that's just down to the luck of the gods, but you really do want to find Dazzle. Venomancer is also important, but not as important. You do need to get poisoners on the board as quickly as you can, but Venomancer is the weakest poisoner. So if you find Dazzle, Queen of Pain, and Alchemist, you're going to sell Venomancer immediately. However, you do want to keep and find Venomancer because you quite often won't find those three heroes particularly quickly, and so you're going to need Venomancer to give you that Poisoner Alliance as early as you can to build up those win streaks and keep that health total nice and high. After that, as I mentioned, the other ones that you really want are the Shamans. So you want Magnus and Enchantress. Those are almost more important than Venomancer because they'll give you those win streaks and that economy that you need, and you can use that to then go and find all the things that you need. So Magnus and Enchantress. Tusk, also a very, very strong early game hero and happens to combine wonderfully well with Magnus and a couple of the heroes that we'll mention in a moment. Chaos Knight. So now moving into tier 2, Chaos Knight, Queen of Pain, and Spirit Breaker. I would actually say Queen of Pain is the most important. Again, we need that Poisoner Alliance first of all, and Queen of Pain is an excellent damage dealer and one of the better poisoners. You will sell her eventually, but not for a long time. And Spirit Breaker is one of your first brute. And he also has Savage, which will link in with your Magnus or your Tusk or some of your other options like Bristleback. Bristleback is, again, not key to your build at all. You will sell him, but in the early game when you're trying to get a win streak, then Bristleback plus Magnus plus Enchantress, for example, is a very, very strong early game build in the first few rounds. So, once again, Queen of Pain and Spirit Breaker as your main ones, and then Bristleback as a potential alternative. But more important in tier 2 than Bristleback, I would say, are Pudge and Nature's Prophet. So Nature's Prophet, again, it's only because the Shaman benefit is so strong. It's not necessarily that I think Nature's Prophet is a particularly good hero. He's not, but he provides the Shaman benefit, and so him in combination with Magnus or Enchantress, if you couldn't find one of the others, is great. And then Pudge. So Pudge is good in the majority of builds. He's a great hero and he causes positioning problems for your opponent, and he's a good frontliner in almost any situation, and he holds defensive items very well. But more importantly, he provides you with that Heartless, that quick and easy access to Heartless when you combine him with any other Heartless. So Pudge is one that you do want to find. However, you will sometimes drop him in the late game, and it's not super important to find the 2-star early on. It's just nice. All right, so moving into tier 3 then. Alchemist. Alchemist is king in this build. We're playing Brute, Poison, and Alchemist is both. So he is one of the most key pieces along with Dazzle in the build, and you will never drop him from the lineup. He also provides his Acid Spray, which is minus armor and sort of an extra Heartless almost on his own. He also takes defensive items well and will be part of your front line. So Alchemist, fantastic. Lifestealer. Lifestealer is the other one you're looking for because, again, he is another brute and a key one. Holds items very well, especially the Mask of Madness that you would like to find. And is the second Heartless. So usually your Heartless comes from Lifestealer plus Pudge or Lifestealer plus Death Prophet later on. So, yeah, Lifestealer, key again. And then Shadow Shaman. Shadow Shaman is key to almost every build in the game, in my opinion. He's one of the strongest heroes in the game. His value on the board is incredible and instant. He has one of the most powerful abilities there are, and he can be put in the back corner, and you're perfectly fine if he gets Pudge hooked, because the moment he casts his ability, he's done his job. So he's there, and he provides that troll benefit, that all-important third alliance, Poisoner, Brute, then Trolls. You throw in the Shadow Shaman, you've already got the Dazzle, and now you've got the Troll benefit. So lovely, that's locked in. He will eventually be replaced by Troll Warlord, but that's in the late game. In tier 3, if you are missing any of your pieces, so if you've hit all of that, if you've got your Dazzle, your Venno, your Queen of Pain, your Spirit Breaker, your Alchemist, your Lifestealer, your Shadow Shaman, then you are good, especially if you've also got your Pudge. You've got your Frontline, you've got your Poisoners, you've got your Alliances, great. But if you do not, if you are having some problems, then Lycan is probably the hero for you. He is one of those heroes that can be slapped into almost any build. A 2-star Lycan, especially if found reasonably early, you'd have to be quite lucky for that, but it's possible. A 2-star Lycan, or even a 1-star Lycan, will help fulfill that front line and damage spot for you until you find those key pieces to replace him. So Lycan is one that you can put in if you're in trouble. If you're missing any of your key pieces, you can throw Lycan in to fill that spot. Now, after that, we get into the real power pocket of the build. So tier 4 is where things start to get very, very good for us. First of all, Doom. My God, is Doom good. He is one of the strongest heroes in the game. His ability is game-changing, and his general stat line, damage, health, everything's amazing. There's nothing to dislike about Doom whatsoever. So Doom wants to go in there. He will also very often be your 4th Brute. So he will complete the Brute Alliance for you and give you a very strong piece. So yeah, Doom, essential. Viper, as well, as we can see above me, very, very important, but it's mainly it's for two reasons. One is because at this stage of the game, once you start to find Viper, Queen of Pain is starting to drop off quite badly. In the early game, she jumps in, screams, does some demon damage, hangs about, puts some poison stacks on, maybe screams again and then dies, which is an unbelievable amount of value. But in the late game, she jumps in, screams, dies. That's it. It's not good enough. You want more poison stacks, you want more DPS over time. You don't want just a one and gone dead poisoner. So Viper replaces the Queen of Pain in that stage of the game where we've moved into the back corner and we are not, diving forwards. We're sitting back to deal with barricades and things like that. We don't want the Queen of Pain anymore. Viper comes in to replace. And Viper provides that dragon benefit, that late game alliance that we're looking for, the key piece, which is the Dragon Knight. So the Viper plus Dragon Knight combination is one of the strongest parts of the build, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But yeah, Viper sets up the Viper DK, and Doom gives us the 4 brutes. In addition to that, we've got 2 slightly more situational pieces. So Death Prophet is very useful if you have missed your Pudge. So if you didn't get the 2-star Pudge in the early game and you want some Heartless, well, you definitely do want some Heartless, then Death Prophet will fill that role. She's also quite powerful if you 2-star her. Her 1-star is a little bit underwhelming, but the 2-star is genuinely a very strong piece. And if you missed out on some items early on, so if in the early game, for example, you took a Void Stone, but then you ended up going Brute Poison, you thought maybe you were going into Mages, so you grab that Void Stone, and then it doesn't work out, you end up going Brute Poison. Now you've got this mana item sitting there, and you've got a bunch of Brutes that don't really need it. Suddenly the Death Prophet can make really good use of it. So Death Prophet with a mana item, or you're in tier 3, you're rolling for that Mask of Madness, you miss, and the second reroll is awful, and you've only got Eul's Scepter. Well, Death Prophet can make really good use of a Eul's Scepter. So she is kind of handy if you have a mana item kicking around. Tidehunter. Tidehunter is the other one. I call him situational. He is, but very, very often you do end up putting him in because he is there for Scaled and there for Warrior. So it's only if you really don't need either of those. He's also a very good holder of Refresher Orb because his Ravage, when he reaches 2-star, is so incredibly strong. An AoE stun for the whole board pretty much when he's 2-star. So Ravage and a Refresher Orb make Tidehunter incredibly strong. He's also a good way to buff up that front line for you, holds items very well, generally a fantastic piece. So you do want to be grabbing those Tidehunters as well. So now we move into that tier 5, that all-important endgame where the build becomes complete. Dragon Knight. Dragon Knight is quintessential to the build, and he is also just one of the strongest synergies with the build. We spoke about why the build works, and that's that it slows the game down by decreasing the enemy's attack speed and attack damage, and then getting more time to use our poison damage and our brute debuff. Dragon Knight adds a third element to this, which is perfectly synergistic, which is that his Dragon's Breath further reduces the attack damage of the opponents. So if they've been hit by the Brute debuff and the Dragon's Breath, then their damage is really, really terrible. And if they've also got some poison stacks, then their attack speed is awful, and you've basically dropped their DPS down to almost nothing. Meanwhile, you are hitting them with lots of poison, lots of Brute debuffs, and now Dragon Knight's quite considerable damage. Of course, you do need Viper to make all of this happen, but you should find Viper around the time that you find Dragon Knight, if not before. After that, Axe, my favourite hero in the game. Not necessarily the best by any means, but definitely my favourite. He is going to be the replacement for your Spirit Breaker. So unless you've got about 4 opponents within Thrall, in which case Spirit Breaker is very important, you're going to replace Spirit Breaker with Axe. You can just throw Axe in if you're missing some other piece and you've got an additional slot. Throw Axe in. Axe is fantastic. Axe takes items incredibly well. His dunk is one of the most satisfying sounds in the game when he finishes people with his axe. He has the Helix, so he's dealing AoE damage. It means that you've got some more answers to summoners and Lycan 3-star and things like that. Anything that has lots and lots of little pieces, Axe can run into the middle of it with a Radiance and make a mess. And if you ever get him to 2-star, he's unbelievably strong, good tank, slows down the game a lot, again, synergizing with the rest of the build, because he can tank so well, and then when he eventually dies, it doesn't matter because their whole board is screwed. Troll Warlord is the next tier 5 that we're going to look at. He will almost always slot into the build. He replaces Shadow Shaman and again is one of the best item holders that you can have. You will hopefully have a Mask of Madness from earlier because you'll try to put it on the Lifestealer to begin with. And then after the Lifestealer has no more use for it, well, he does, but you know, we can take that Mask of Madness and transfer it onto the Troll Warlord and give him his best item. He also takes Satanic particularly well. He takes Butterfly really well, Moon Shard. Almost all of the late game items fit Troll Warlord fantastically. And he provides Warrior benefit, which along with the Pudge that you might already have and the Tide Hunter that you've probably been holding on to, give you that Warrior benefit if you do need your front line to live just a little bit longer against physical damage. So Troll Warlord, a fantastic piece. After that, there's the sort of situational one, and that is Medusa. So you don't have any hunters and you're not planning to run any, so she's never going to have the hunter bonus in this build normally, but she does provide scaled if you are also there with your Tide Hunter. So if you've got Tide Hunter, Medusa gives you scaled, gives you a way to survive against the mage compositions, and she's the best Cadence Blade holder in the game because she gets multiple procs of it every time she fires. So if you're up against a 3-star Brawny composition, a 3-star Knight composition, a 3-star Warrior composition, or generally anything, Yul, for example, or Jul if you prefer that pronunciation, anything with a huge health pool, Cadence Blade is pretty damn broken against, and Medusa gets to use it twice per shot, or 3 times if you manage to 2-star her. So Medusa, a very strong piece, and of course her Stone's Gaze stun, increasing damage taken by the opponents, slowing the game down, and generally, again, synergizing with the build. And that's it. That's it for the heroes. That's what we want to put in. So I will demonstrate here, or probably, wait, which way? That way. I will demonstrate here what the final sort of complete, final boss mode of Brute Poison would look like. It's very rare that you get all of these pieces, but you can find whichever ones turn up for you and make that wonderful, wonderful board. So I hope you have a lot of fun with it. Now then, let's get to the Underlord. We haven't spoken about that much yet, but the Underlord will be Eno. This is one of the parts of the build which does not require much decision making, which is in some ways comforting. You will pick Eno 100% of the time. It doesn't matter which version of Eno you get, although you would prefer to see the Furball, the all-out attack Eno, or all-out offensive. All-out attack Eno is the best one because he applies multiple stacks of poison. It's one of the very few times when an Underlord has direct synergy with a particular alliance, but Eno does have a synergy with Poisoner in both of his forms. So Heal and Steal will take away an item from the opposing team, lowering their effectiveness, slowing down the tempo of the game. He'll heal your heroes, again, Healing slows down the tempo of the game, and he will apply poison stacks, which will slow down their attack speed and deal damage to them over time, slowing down and helping to damage them. And Eno himself, when he gets hit, will jump out of the fight, soak up some damage, jump, stun, again, slowing down the fight. He does not require any protection, so you don't need to hide him away in the corner or have some barricades for him to sit behind, and therefore we don't need to take barricades. It's one of the builds where you're not reliant on barricades, and that's why another reason why Brute Poison is so reliable. You don't need to worry about barricades. In fact, you're not going to take them. Even if you see them, you're not going to take them, which opens you up to grab those nice tier 2 items like Heaven's Halberd and Vanguard. So, Eno, direct synergy with Poison, slows the game down, and if you do manage to get the all-out attack Eno, then it's even better because he gets another board-wide stun and applies 3 stacks of Poison to all of them, which is just stupidly strong, absolutely broken. So that's the one that you want to find, but frankly, you have no control over it. Pick Eno every time. He is the correct choice and synergizes with the build wonderfully. All right, we've been speaking about items here and there, but let's go through tier by tier and have a look at which items you want when you're playing Brute Poisoner. So, in tier 1, we want Chainmail, Vitality Booster, or Headdress. Chainmail is the strongest tier 1 item in the game. In my opinion, I don't think there's pretty much no build in the game that doesn't benefit from a chainmail, so it's incredibly reliable, and it's just everybody has some frontline. You've always got something that's going to get hit first, and if it's got a chainmail, it's going to live longer and do its job better. So chainmail, ideal. Vit Booster and Headdress. You want Vit Booster if you can, Headdress if you can't. Are the 2 sort of win streak items. So they affect 3 heroes that are horizontally stacked, and in the early game that's how many you have. So it basically affects 100% of your board with plus health or plus health regen, and in either case that is the best way to get early win streaks in combination with Shaman Savage or Troll Knight, as we mentioned in the hero section. So get those strong boards, put those win streaky items on them, and bring in the gold and start leveling up. In tier 2, we are looking for Vanguard. Vanguard, again, slows down the pace of the lobby and will greatly protect one of your pieces. It's actually sort of almost more effective on 1-star pieces because the bonus health is a larger percentage of their total health, and those little ticks of damage that it prevents are more important on a hero with a lower health pool. However, they die faster, so they don't get the effect for as long. Anyway, Vanguard, very, very good defensive item, and slows down the pace of the lobby, again, synergizing with the goal of the build. Heaven's Halberd, same thing. Unbelievably strong item generally. Gives you 25% evasion, so effectively 25% more health, slowing down the build, slowing down the game, and disarms an opposing piece. Again, slowing down the game. If they're not attacking, they're not killing, the game gets slower, you get to do all of your good stuff. So Heaven's Halberd and Vanguard, those are the key ones. Other than that, Desolator is strong. It doesn't fit the sort of synergy of the build. It actually speeds up rather than slows down the lobby, but it speeds it up in your direction, so great. Minus armor, always good. Try and put it on a ranged piece. Obviously, Desolator, a fine item. So those are the 3 that you're looking for at tier 2. At tier 3, there's quite a few good options, but the main one is Mask of Madness. So you do want to find Mask of Madness because it is so strong on Lifestealer and on Troll Warlord. After that, Silver Edge. Silver Edge is fantastic on almost anybody, but you can put it on any of your ranged heroes, preferably, so that you get multiple procs. You can break your opponents, make sure they don't get to use their key items, and of course, attack speed and health are no bad thing. After that, the most important by far is the Brute's Hat, the Leg Breaker's Fedora. So this one is a key piece. Now, you actually do intend to put 4 Brutes, sometimes you even put 5 Brutes on the field, but in the late game, you want to be putting in that Dragon Knight, and maybe you need that Tidehunter and Medusa for situational spots that you need those heroes. And so having the ability to use the Brute Hat to put 4 Brutes, to keep 4 Brutes on the board easily is fantastic. It also takes the pressure off you to find Doom, so you can take that Brute Hat, at tier 3, and then you're not sort of really needing Doom to give you the 4th brute. You will already have it. You just throw it on your Shadow Shaman or something. You want to put it on a ranged hero, because ranged heroes will have more legitimate targets for the brute debuff than the others. So yeah, absolutely do grab the brute hat if you see it. Quickly checking the other options. Skull Basher's okay. Skull Basher's fine. Doesn't particularly synergize, but you know, if you do manage to bash someone, that's good. You can stick it on a hero like Viper with a high attack speed, or one of your trolls, and it can be a good item. So Skull Basher is a decent sort of second choice. Going into tier 4, things get a little bit more situational, so the best item in the game pretty much is probably the Cadence Blade. So if you see a Cadence Blade, you're absolutely picking that up unless everybody is playing Summoners for some reason. So Cadence Blade will sit on your Medusa or one of your Trolls, or anyone with a fast attack speed that doesn't otherwise deal a ton of damage. So Cadence Blade is key and will help you deal with anyone that has high health. Frankly, it will help you deal with anyone. It's an incredibly strong item. So Cadence Blade is probably the #1 pick at tier 4. Then you've got the Butterfly. Butterfly is incredibly good on all of your late game heroes. It's very, very good on Doom, Troll Warlord, Dragon Knight, pretty much everybody. It does what you want. It slows the game down in terms of its evasion and speeds it up in your favor in terms of attack speed to apply more of your debuffs and attack damage. Perfect. Black King Bar is a bit situational, but if you feel like the mages are coming for you and the mage spirits are going to be your problem, which often they are, it's one of the weaknesses of brute poison in general, and you need to keep an eye out for it, then Black King Bar can be a really great one. It's good for your Doom, for example, or your Dragon Knight, whatever you need to keep alive. Lifestealer also takes it really well after you hand off the Mask of Madness. Black King Bar, Lifestealer can be fantastic. So yeah, lots of good items in tier 4. Moonshard, also incredibly good on pretty much all of your carries, and Refresher Orb is astonishingly good on Tidehunter. If you don't have the Tidehunter, it's a lot less good. It can go on to a 2-star Shadow Shaman, for example. If you know that you have a Tidehunter, you're waiting for that 2-star, and you're thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to get value. If you've got a 2-star Shadow Shaman, you've already got value for the Refresher Orb, so you can pop that in. But I definitely think you take that more as a sort of a reroll option, not as a main option, unless you know you're going to go for that Tide in that lobby. All right, then we get on to tier 5. So in tier 5, things get a bit interesting. Vlad's Offering is probably the best item and the one that I would look at and go for. It gives you that sort of aura, that all-round damage, armor, lifesteal, prolongs the lobby, synergizes with the build. You're going to get sick of me saying that, I know, but it's true. So Vladimir's Offering, one of the best. Horn of the Alpha is just solid, just adds in another piece. You can always take it. It doesn't matter who carries it. So if all of your carries have already got good items and you just, you get the Horn of the Alpha, throw it in, sure, it's fine. Bloodthorn is one of the best. So Bloodthorn is an incredibly good carry item, good on all of your strong late game pieces, especially the ranged ones, and then you can line those up with key opposing pieces to silence them. So you can try and silence the enemy Tidehunter that's going to run in and ravage you, or Kunkar that's going to run in and ship it right into the middle of your board. Whatever it is, you can line up the Bloodthorn, and of course it happens to deal a hell of a lot of damage. Great on Medusa, Dragon Knight, Doom, Troll Warlord, anyone you like. Radiance, incredibly good on a Doom 2-star. If you've got that 2-star Doom, he's going to live a long time. He can hold the Radiance, deal extra damage all around, and again, the hit-miss chance granted is again helping to extend the game. Heart of Tarask is not super important, but if you have already found Axe and you think you've got enough health and time to maybe 2-star him, a 2-star Axe with a Heart of Tarask is a monster. 2-star Doom, also a bit of a monster with Heart. Heart can also be okay on Viper if you have nothing else, because his corrosive skin and so on makes him live a long time. Again, only if you've 2-starred him, otherwise it's not really worth it. Satanic, unbelievably good on Troll Warlord, not bad on Dragon Knight, for example. And Shiva's Guard is incredibly good on your Tide Hunter if you get the chance, or Pudge if you don't have it, or you can stick it on Alchemist, for example, put him a bit further towards the front and get that Shiva's Guard off. Try not to focus too much on Shiva's Guard if you think your final opponent will be a mage, because the Shiva's Guard goes off in an AoE, hits all of his board, gives them all mana, and then they all cast spells at you and you have a very bad day. So do be careful with the Shiva's Guard if your final opponent will be a mage. I hope you enjoyed the guide and that it was useful to you. Do go and try this out. Do let me know in the comments if you think, first of all, if you disagree with any of what I've said. I'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you. This is a build that I play a hell of a lot, and if I can learn something more about it, then I would be happy to do so. If I've missed anything obvious, I'm sure there's a hell of a lot to cover here. The depth of this build and guide was quite surprising to me over the time taken to create and record it. And I hope that any advice you give I can apply to the next guides, so you can look forward to a lot more of these. If you enjoy them, they will be coming thick and fast, I hope, covering things like level hunters, spirit mage, level mages, role assassins, role knights, role brawnies, and builds such as that. So I look forward to seeing you for those ones. Take care, have a lot of fun with this build. Let me know how you go with your particular grind, and yeah, I'll see you for the next one.